I think it's beginning. So like Jay said it best, for the last 15 years, it's been a bear market. Nobody really wants gold or silver. They're happy with U.S. treasuries and paper dollars and paper stocks. But now when you look at that hot air balloon hanging over there, after 2008, they kept blowing the balloon bigger and bigger and bigger. And now that little gondola hanging below is the economy. And it's hanging on this massive hot air balloon of fake money. So yesterday I went, oh my God, this is what I've been waiting for all these years. So I ran out and bought some. But I want to give a plug to this book here. This is called Who Stole My Pension? With myself, Ted Siddell, and myself wrote this book. And what happened in 2008, which caused the hot air balloon to be blown up. You know, Ben Bernanke was our Fed chairman, Federal Reserve Bank chairman. They printed, when the economy collapsed in 2008, they called the Lehman Brothers moment. And Lehman Brothers went down. My prediction is we're going to call it the pension moment, because pensions all over the world are empty. And every time Jay Powell, our not secretary, but our head of the Federal Reserve Bank, pumps more money out there, the more dangerous it gets for people. And when they raise interest rates, the stock market comes down. That your pensions are gone. Your 401k is toast. And people are still saving dollars. And I think what's going to happen, Jay, is when people find out their pensions are gone, this is all over the world. I think the Federal Reserve banks, the Bank of Canada, the Bank of England, they're going to have to start printing even more money to cover, to make sure the old guys, baby boomers, have some kind of money to retire. So that's why when I saw gold top 2,000, I said, I better get off my butt, because the first one I ever bought was $50. So what I paid $50 for back in 1972 is now worth $2,000. What does that projecting forward another 10 years mean? So all the old guys and boomers are scrambling around. Our Social Security is bankrupt. And I think the majority of baby boomers, my U.S. baby boomers, are counting on Social Security, and it's bankrupt.
Yeah.
So as a Canadian looking down on the 48 or 50 states here, what do you see going on in the U.S. economy? Because you see it from the same point of view I do, which is precious metal side. The stock market right now?
No, God, no, absolutely not. And it's how the first few years have played out. It's been this increased unpredictable chaos and volatile scenarios. And I think that party's honestly just getting started. And I'm not a doom and gloom guy. Like I'm long human ingenuity. I think that we're a very impressive species and we'll always find solutions, but there's going to be some very challenging years ahead. You know, your pension scenario is really interesting to me because I'm very curious how that's going to play out. It's like the ultimate example of how counterparty risk can go very, very poorly. When you put your trust, the trust of your retirement in somebody else's hands. What happens if they can't deliver on that? And yeah, Canada's in the same scenario. We'll print to try to solve that problem, right? To give our civilians something to retire on. But when you're dependent on somebody else to finance the balance of your life, that's a very, very uncertain situation. And right now, I'm sure the numbers are the same in Canada. I'm actually more familiar with the United States, but it's like 1/3 of people have zero savings they can retire on. Another third have extraordinarily limited that would require them to reduce the standard of their living in retirement. That's a lot of people. And that's going to be a lot of angry people because they were sold a story that now can't be delivered. So it's just getting a bit more heated. And this is a really big one. This is a really significant one. I don't know how it's solved. It's terrifying to me. I'm glad that you brought it up. I feel really fortunate that I can sort of see this coming right now. At a young age was introduced to concepts like precious metals and personal sovereignty and a bit more of a libertarian mindset, because I think that is spreading right now. And it's really positive that it's spreading because people need to take control. It's very, very important.
So just to give an idea is that, again, I bought my first coin in 1972. I was a pilot in Vietnam, and I had to fly behind enemy lines. The reason to fly behind enemy lines was this gold mine was in U.S. hands.
Right.
But the North Vietnamese army rolled south so fast that the mine was now in enemy hands. And Nixon had just taken the dollar off the gold standard August 15th, 1971. And I was pussyfooting around and said, I have time. I'll go buy some gold from this mine. And the next thing you know, the North Vietnamese army rolled south, and this mine is now in enemy territory. So I thought if I flew behind enemy lines, I might get a discount from the gold dealer. Gold and silver are God's money. They're put here on planet Earth. They're not manufactured out of trees called paper. And so someone's yelling spot at me. And I realized at that moment why Nixon taking the dollar off the gold standard in 1971 was so important. It just blew the whole global economy into this bubble, which is that hot air balloon, little gondola hanging beneath it. And right now, I think the end is near. I love going to the VRIC, the Vancouver Resource Investor Conference, because I go there to learn. And you got thousands of people. You've sold more tickets this year than ever before. And the interest in precious metals is increasing because people can see that gondola is losing air right now. And my generation, we're the first generation with what we call a 401k. In Canada, it's called an RRSP. But basically, exactly as Jay says, you're putting your future retirement in the hands of somebody else. And our central banks are printing that. That's what just happened in England, right? They had to reverse and start printing again because their pensions were going broke. And most Americans are not even close to the industry. You know, most Americans are into paper like bonds and the dollar, US dollar.
Right.
But right now, what Jay knows is there's massive movements of gold and silver moving to China and India. What's going on with these massive movements of gold, and what do you think the Chinese and Indians are up to, and Russians?
Yeah, I think that the fragile trust that we've had globally for the last 40 years has been shattered, and I don't think it's going to be repaired in my lifetime. And so countries like China, it's in their best interest to prove to the world that they have a stable, trustworthy currency. And the best way to do that is to fill your vault with gold, right? Something that we haven't, again, done in the West. And if you want to take, for example, if you're China and you want to go to the Saudis and say, we want to pay for oil in Chinese currency, the first thing the Saudis are going to say is, why should we trust Chinese currency? And if you have a vault full of gold, there's a lot more supporting that statement. Now, we've seen central bank gold purchases accelerate to a rate faster than they have in 50 years. So that should raise your eyebrows. That's physical gold being taken off the market. You got to ask what happens next. This is a finite resource, which is to say countries that historically were comfortable storing their gold in London or New York now want it within their borders. Germany is a great example. It's a country who's historically stored their gold in New York because Europe, it's a crowded continent, many countries, many nations, tight borders. It always descends into war as a consequence. That's the history of Europe. So Germany was more comfortable storing their gold offshore, but now when there's an actual hot war occurring in Europe, they're more comfortable with their gold within their borders. That's very telling about how they're seeing the future right now. Lots of volatility.
So and what's going on with China? I mean, the reason China's, as you know, I started my first gold mine in China, and I took the company, it was called Mondoro Mining, and we took it public on the Toronto Stock Exchange, and we struck gold in China, in Dalian province. And I found out what counterparty risk means and country risk means. And that's what most people don't understand about gold and silver, where it's stored, where God created gold and silver are in some of the most dangerous countries who really don't like America. Long time ago, I took the company public on the Toronto Stock Exchange, and about 2 years later, we struck gold. So I want you to know that I was a billionaire for about a couple of years, and then the Chinese took my gold mine, and it was tough, you know. I mean, so a thing called counterparty risk or country risk. So it does seem like gold and silver and many of our precious resources are not held on what I would call friendly soil. Any comments on that?
No, I think that counterparty risk from a country standpoint is going to increase dramatically, because if we're departing a world where there was some kind of a fragile, but there was trust, fragile or not, and we're no longer operating that way, we're into a scenario where it's more every country for themselves, right? You can't rely on allies you used to be able to rely on to protect supply chains, et cetera. We're in an energy crisis. We're in a food crisis, right? We're very much in an every man for himself scenario, globally speaking. And so if you've got valuable deposits and resources within your borders and you can't trust the allies you used to be able to trust to protect your supply chains, then what's in your best interest? It's to take those resources and take that value for, I mean, even if they're squandered, and usually they are when resources are nationalized, they're not effectively produced. But I think geopolitical risk is way more significant than it was even 5 years ago.